And we're going for part 2 right now for today's lecture. What I have here is a small model that I provided that can help get you started with what's called a bust. Now this would basically be a type of model that you would start at the very beginning of their shoulders and kind of going upwards to just focus your efforts on trying to make this area look as good as you can. So to get started with this, similar to what I showed before, I would strongly recommend just getting a small base like this ready. And do your best to try and spread out your geometry, kind of like what I've done over here. Once that's done, you could actually go into Maya and then start sculpting. But what I usually would recommend first is see if you can find yourself a reference for what you might want to make for yourself. So for example, I might want to make something that looks like a human head like this, or I might want to make a human head like this. Haven't really decided yet, and plus I'm just going to experiment, so I think I'm actually going to go with the other one for now. And again, the nice thing about this head is it does show a lot of the muscle structure. Not necessarily necessary, but it can be helpful. But I can already see what I'm going to need for this. I'm going to need a high poly count, obviously, and I'm going to need some eyes, which I can definitely put in, and they're going to be a little below the ears, as you can see here, and just basically sculpt out these areas the best that you can. So I'm going to put this off screen for now, but I will have it as a reference for myself. Now you could also put this in as a texture if you want to do that, but I'll leave it to your own best judgment. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is, well, actually the good news on my end is a lot of this stuff is already set up. I can already see that there's a couple of sections I will need to change. So to get this started, I'm going to go to Sculpting. Forgot to mention that before. I do apologize about that. And I'm going to go to the push and pull because this actually has a pretty good poly count. And let's see, I'm going to put this at 4, apparently. Yeah, I made the measurements for this a little bit bigger so the brush wouldn't be so large. And yeah, I'm just going to basically fix up my neck a little bit. And again, while it's a low poly, it's going to be a lot easier to fix some of these elements. And I'm just basically bringing out the chin a little bit more. Again, I'm just trying to get the basic elements first. And remember, undo is always your friend. If it's too big, you can always shrink it down a little bit. In this case, it's a little on the big side. Now, I'm not going to show how to make the whole thing, just because, again, it would take a little time to get a whole sculpt in here. But I want to at least show how you can get started with this. Again, if you're able to get the basic elements first, it will help out in the long run. So for all intents and purposes, the main base of my head is almost done. Going to bring in the eyes a little bit more. And again, this is where the reference kind of comes into play and is helpful, because I can figure out how there we go, how high to bring up my ears. And where to bring my eyes. Before I go any further, I kind of want to bring my eyes in here just to help out. So I'm going to go to my poly model and bring in a sphere. And again, looking at my reference, yeah, that's way too big. Okay, so that looks like it's pretty good. And again, if you have a reference to help you, before I go any further, make sure that's on world. Yep, that's way better. Maybe 0.75. There we go. 0.6. Such a massive change between the different shapes. Yeah, there we go. But again, I find that if you put the eye in there, it helps out so much. But I think that's a good start for us. Oop. And again, I'm only using the push and pull at this point. I haven't done any other tools at this time. So that's looking pretty decent. Just take a look at my reference again. Okay, there we are. So I think that's pretty good. So I'm going to go to my modeling toolkit again. Select, let's say the move's already there. Going to hit Shift D to make my copy. Put a negative on the X value over here. Looks like it went in pretty well. And of course I could always switch that up later. Okay, so I think most of my most of this is done pretty well. And I'm only at 9,000 faces, so I definitely have plenty of room to continue adding a smooth. So I'm going to put in a division of 2 to get started with this. So that's going to put this to a very high amount. Oof, man, I'm already at 152, so that's definitely very high. But now I can start putting in my details. So this is where I could go back to my sculpting, and of course it helps if you actually have the right thing selected. Yep, there we go. And I could just basically click and drag up and around like that. Again, if you double click the button, it'll bring this area up. That's why. So I'm going to put this at a value of 1. Let's see if this works a little bit better. Not too satisfied with that. There we go. That's the way. But again, remember, with a higher poly count, means that smooth is going to have a much less of an effect. So let's put this at 5 maybe. Yeah, much better. I think I might try and bring this a little bit closer to the middle part of my face. Once again, I'm going to hit Shift D and going to move that to the other side. Again, the modeling toolkit seems to have a much more accurate method of duplicating and such. But yeah, that looks pretty nice overall. Actually, looking at this, I probably could bring the nose a little bit further down. And again, when you're doing the push and pull, don't be afraid to make the size a little bit bigger. Let's see. Again, it always helps to make sure that you have the right object selected. Yeah, I'm just going to bring this down a little bit more. And I should be able to, yeah, there we go. And just like that, I end up getting a much bigger nose than I needed. But that's why Shift exists. Or better yet, undo. So if it overdoes the job like it just did over there, you can always put that back. So 0.3, I think will make this good. And yeah, there we are. I'm just going to continue to fix up a couple other areas, but I don't want to take too much time in showing how to do this. I just want to make sure I can give you the basics on how to approach certain spots, since they can be a little bit tricky. Specifically, the eyes can be a bit rough, which is one of the reasons why it's a good idea to have the eyes as separate elements, because let me show you something. If I was to, well, preferably not just do what I just did, I can make the brush a little bit smaller, like 0.25, and I can make the eyelids by sculpting these areas out like so. I'm not going to lie, it's going to take a little bit of trial and error, but if you get the right look, yep, there we go. You can eventually bring that area that you hollowed out to make it look like an eyelid. It isn't too complicated either, but it does take a little bit of patience. And you can use the pinch to bring the corners in a little bit more. So I'm going to go to the size. I'm going to change this to 0.5. Now, a lot of the stuff that I'm showing you here, and I do want to make sure this is very clear, can be applied to other softwares, as a lot of the other sculpting softwares have very similar tools. And while I love the tools that they have here for sculpting, there's a lot of other tools, a lot of other softwares that can do this even better. But I want to show this on this one first. So, yep, there we go. There we are. Okay. I think I might have made the nose a little bit too low. But again, a little bit of trial and error never hurts. Let's put this at full 1. Yeah, there we go. There we are. So yeah, I'm just basically using the brush, the push and pull in there to help that out. 0.25 to shape this up just a little bit better. And what I'm doing here is every so often I'm sculpting, then holding shift. There we are. Okay. And again, when you're using the push and pull, just make the brush much bigger. Yeah, there we are. Cool. All right, so just making some adjustments to the ears now that I have the geometry to do that. Because now I should be able to actually fill that in a little bit better. One. Let's see. Again, I'm going to hold Control to basically bring this in a little bit more. One of the nice things about being able to work with symmetry is if you have a reference, kind of like what I'm doing here, what I do for one side basically works for both. And let's see here, just basically pushing in a couple areas like this. And again, the nice thing about a lot of what I'm doing is once I put this at a higher poly, it'll potentially look even better. So let's see, I'm going to take this, what I have right now, I'm going to put this at 1.5 because I'm going to bring the ear way down. Now the hardest part is you have to basically keep this area close to the cheek in terms of the shape. In other words, it's basically a little bit too hole-like. So I definitely want to bring the front part a little bit closer in. So I think if I put that at 0.5, maybe 0.75, yeah. So I'm going to have to sculpt a little bit of this again, but that's fine. But I won't take too long with that one, 0.25. So I'm not going to do too much else with the ears because that's going to just take some time. There we are. Now also don't forget you have other details you really should get to as well. Say for example this area down here. And again, it's a lot easier to smooth these areas up early on. I'm going to try to get the basic lips. Yep, definitely need to shrink this down a little bit. Put in a straight line first, then try to add a little bit of shape between the two areas. Yeah, that's definitely going to be a little bit too much, but I can use my push and pull to bring this area back a little bit so that my lips are a little bit rounded, which is good. I can use the pinch like before to bring the lips in a little bit more. I can use the push and pull to shape up these lips a little bit. Cool. Now once you have the basic shape for everything, you should be able to smooth it one more time. Again, try to keep it between 400,000 to 600,000. If it goes to 800,000, you might want to stop. Anything past that, your computer might explode. So you always have to be careful with that. If you're using a computer from the past, I'd say 5 years, you should be okay to put it to at least a little bit more. If you have a computer from the past year or so, you probably could even try to go to 1 million. You got to be careful, as you can see, it can cause some issues. Ooh, I'm loving where that's going. But now that I have that extra poly, I could start adding some shapes if I need to, or some other detail. But anyways, so I'm probably going to finish this a little bit more on my own. But what I would say that if a person wants to do this as a project, you're going to need more than just what you see here. Now, you'll see that this person over here not just made the bust, but they also added some elements like hair, horns, extra eyes, a little bit of clothing down here. And again, it did take some time, but he definitely got his patience worth. So if you wanted to add some extra hair, you could potentially add some more in with just a simple shape. So for example, over here, if I want to give this gentleman a little bit of hair, I could add a separate element to it. Well, actually, you have two ways of making hair. You could either make a separate shape, or if you feel particularly lucky, you could try to use the foam and just kind of foam up the hair area a little bit. Oh yeah, that's definitely going to need to go much higher. Let's put this at 1 maybe. No, but apparently even stronger still. And a value of 1 over here. So this definitely can bring out the geometry a little bit more to help. The only problem is you're sharing your poly count with your actual mesh, and that could be a problem. Before we go any further, I am going to save this as back up. You can name yours whatever you wish, because again, this is not an official assignment. This is just a chance to teach you something new and get a little bit of practice in. But anyways, so let's see what we got here. So I'm just basically making myself a simple box. I'm going to use the Insert Edge Loop tool. Uh-oh. Yeah. As I said before, undo is definitely your friend. Oh, I think I need to turn this off. Oh, that is definitely an undo. Yeah, just a bit of a heads up, you definitely do not want to add more geometry, like an insert edge loop or whatever to that. Let's see here. And if you have some trouble, like what I'm having right over here, just because there's so much going on, feel free to just select your box by itself and add your geometry this way. So go into View Selected, Insert Edge Loop Tool. I can't do this symmetrically, so that's why I had to turn that off first. In fact, instead of doing that way, I think a better way for me to go in this would probably be to go to the Connect and add 3 segments. Yeah, there we go. Anyways, let's see. Now I can put this back on. But again, this is if you want to add in hair. If you don't want to add in hair, probably don't even have to worry about this so much. But now that that's done, I can go to my View Selected, and bring this down a little bit. Bring this area forward a little bit. And yeah, that's not looking too bad, at least as a start. Though I could probably bring this area down and back a bit. Now I can use the smooth and basically spread out the areas I need to. And if necessary, you can hit 4 to basically see these areas a bit easier. There we are. Let's see here. There we go. And again, this is basically just a little start for everybody. And once that's shaped up a little bit better, except for that edge, just going to fix that up. You can try and smooth it again. In this case, I'm going to actually add just a new smooth. Yep. And just keep on smoothing until you can eventually sculpt that out yourself. That's pretty much the long and short of how you can approach this. But hopefully this gives you an idea of what could be done here and just how far you could approach this. Now, just a bit of a heads up, when you're doing the actual final, you don't necessarily need to make it a human. You could actually sculpt this into whatever you want. I just wanted to give you a human to get started and have something I could give you a little bit of a start for. So that's pretty much most of what I wanted to show here. Now, I am going to be doing a different tutorial for the paint over, so just a bit of a heads up on that. But that's pretty much most of the stuff I wanted to show, at least for now. If you do have any questions about the final project, feel free to email me and I'll explain the best I can. But as long as you're in the ballpark of the examples I showed previously, you should be in good shape. So with that, we're going to end my part of the video tutorial right now. We'll go with a different one later, and hopefully you found this useful. And if you do, and I'll see y'all on the next one.